What's up, guys? John Sentez, Cutternation Baseball Podcast. You know what to do. You haven't liked and subscribed. This is going to be everywhere. Epic podcast. I've been following my guy here for a minute. But first, if you're interested in snagging a custom glove, no back, all mesh, Cutternation JS1, please do that. 4 web options, hats, gear, brand new remote training project that we are going to be pumping out, which I'm excited to dive into. Austin here too. But yeah, you know what to do. When we do this podcast, I've been doing it for a long time. And what I really like to do is I used to do a ton of research on my guests and then just come in like ultra prepared. But I just felt like I almost knew too much. And I just like the organic ideas and how they flow and stuff. So do have like some guide questions that I like to do,
Sure.
But I like to learn from people directly. And I know that when I bring people into our audience, especially over here in San Diego, they appreciate different perspectives, especially coming from the person. So Austin Wasserman Strength. You're in Florida, right?
I'm in South Florida.
Oh,
Yep.
okay,
Wasserman Strength
I'm
and
from Destin, so
oh,
small
nice
connection there. Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. So yeah.
I'm originally from New England. I grew up in New Hampshire, so I'm in the different weather now, different climate, so I'm loving it.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I got over here to San Diego, and I always tell everybody, it's kind of weird, especially with our summer ball. Like, everybody leaves San Diego to go play in like Canada, and like Oregon, Texas, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Right.
Have you lost your mind? Like, do you know where you should be playing?
Right.
First of all, you leave to go play college anyway, and then you leave again. Like you're making mistakes here,
No, totally.
That's a product of honestly a bad college system that I have actually participated in, and we're going to be fighting that this year with our own version of our college team with much less games, way more development, way more of what we like to call truth. As most people do, but like I still throw, so that's kind of like the fun part. Like we did a content day yesterday with a bunch of TikTokers. I was like 86, 88, like I'm 37. I throw 7 pitches. Like I'm just what some of us might call an asshole, and I'm like completely okay with that level of fun, in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Appreciate that, man. No, I appreciate that.
So yeah, Austin. So let everybody, let's go from. Hit me with the summary, but whatever you feel like, because I feel like everybody's beginning story is so valuable to where they are now.
Sure.
And so, take us a little bit through the history of, your background in ball and throwing, and then obviously you've got all those acronyms that go with your name as well. So that's fun too,
Sure. Yeah, no, I grew up in New Hampshire. I played high school baseball, football in New Hampshire. I was Gatorade Player of the Year in 2002, which is cool, but it's New Hampshire, so you're like, trying to figure out where you are in the world of baseball. Like, what does that mean? You're New Hampshire. So, and then I got an opportunity to go to University of New Orleans. I played D1 ball in Sun Belt Conference for 2 years, and then I ended up transferring to the University of Connecticut, and I got to play for UConn under Coach Penders, and Coach Blood was there, and Desi, and it was an awesome experience. So I was there. I got my undergrad in kinesiology and strength and conditioning through the Department of Kinesiology at UConn, and then I got my master's in clinical nutrition actually at Bridgeport University in Connecticut. And I haven't done too much with nutrition. It's one of those things where it's just there's so much information out there, and there's it's kind of a different approach. So I did have that background just because I wanted to have that base when I was working with my athletes, providing them, things that they could take and just really good nutrition. But honestly, like Wasserman Strength and high level throwing kind of took a shape of its own. So I was, got my undergrad, I got my master's, and then I was working in New York City, actually, in a physical therapy facility, just pretty much out of school, learning how to, train athletes, rehab athletes. I had Roger Goodell as a client, so that was kind of cool. I got to stretch him out, and not a lot of talk, but I was just there and seeing these caliber profiles. I got to work with Dr. Julius Ervin's daughter. She was a professional tennis player, so I got to work with her, which is really cool. And a lot of the athletes I was working with wasn't necessarily baseball and softball at the time. In New York, you have basketball, you have running, you have cyclists, you have tennis players. So there was a whole bunch of different athletes that we were looking at and seeing, and I just got a really good understanding of the human body and the rehab process, and then how to get them back into a return to play protocol from there. So it was a really great experience. Worked on Madison Ave in New York City. And then I actually quit my job in New York to work with baseball and softball players. So in 2008, I quit my job in New York, 2009, and I started a company in New Hampshire, just working with athletes, like renting a cage, literally just renting a cage. I had like 4 athletes, 4 baseball players that I was working with, just teaching them movement, throwing, med ball work. And from there, it just started to grow. Like 4 went to 8 players, 8 went to 15. And then all of a sudden, there's just these people hungry for information for developing, throwing patterns and strength and conditioning. And it's funny because my whole goal was to be a major league strength coach. Like I wanted to be a major league strength coach. I wanted to live that life, that dream, and be a part of it. But I had one athlete. So the first 4 years of my business that I started was just strength and conditioning. And again, I wanted to be a strength coach. And I had one athlete, a mom brought her daughter to me to help her throw. And this was kind of foreign to me because I was like, doesn't everybody know how to throw? Like, I want to get you strong. I want to get you powerful. I want to teach you how to accelerate and decelerate. And those things won't matter if you can't sequence your body properly, or you can't rotate effectively, or understand like where your arm is in space through the throwing zone. So when that athlete came to me, I was like, all right, this is gonna be perfect, super easy. And then I saw her throw and I was like, whoa, what is happening? Like same arm, same leg, like 12-year-old girl, like should be thrown pretty efficiently, but it was like 35 miles an hour as a 12-year-old, just like same arm, same leg, like no instruction. And I was kind of like, is this New Hampshire, or are we like, is this happening all over the place? So I'm like, okay, let's work with this athlete. Let's get through this lesson. And then, we finished it. It was an hour lesson, and it was really challenging. Like, took a lot of video, just trying to figure out these athletes' movements, because I'd never seen these types of things before. Again, I just realized everyone kind of knew how to throw. And a week later, I had a dad bring a son to me to teach him how to pitch, and like, perfect. I play baseball, like super easy. I get him just like, let's step and throw. Let's go through a progression, and really, really terrible pattern sequencing, like very push throw. And it just didn't look like there was anyone teaching this type of, teaching throwing in general in this area. And so I just dug really deep into overhand throwing, reading research papers, talking to orthos, PTs, getting video of every single athlete that I've worked with, and trying to just figure out how they move, understanding certain athletes have characteristics that might be okay based on their position or the way that they move. So it was really learning all these characteristics and types of movements with like their lower half, their upper half, their arm pathway, their glove side, their lead leg, and then just understanding like where these athletes fit into a training program. So if their lead leg was inefficient, okay, we have patterning and drill work for that, along with strength training. Of course, because strength training is like one of the basis of all of our programming. Whether you throw and like you think you're just going to throw, you're going to lift as well. Like there's no question. You need to rotate, you need to lift, you need to get strong. So from there and identifying these characteristics, it made things clearer for me on how these athletes were either taught or what their breakdown might be. And I was really just trying to help my local athletes, and I was writing a lot, just putting up a blog. I was on like High School Baseball Web back in the day, like discuss fast pitch, and just trying to see what people were searching for and needing help with. And again, overhand throwing was like one of those skills where it was neglected, it wasn't taught properly, but yet like everyone expects still totally.
Like, yeah, I mean, I see wild stuff all the time.
Right. So it was just interesting to see that and be like, all right, how do we help these athletes, and how do we help these coaches teach their athletes? How do we help parents who don't really like understand like the movements, because it's a complex friggin' movement, like it's hard. And so it's really just about educating the parents, the coaches, how to instruct it, what to look for, what not to change, like what things could be okay in terms of throwing athletes. But yeah, it just kind of took a life of its own. And then in 2000, I would say 15 or 16, Coach Murphy from Alabama had called me in my office, and I was working baseball and softball athletes, but for some reason, just softball, for whatever reason, needed help in throwing more than in baseball. And I just kind of I mean, obviously baseball kids need to learn how to throw because pitching is just specialized throwing. So we need to learn how to sequence and throw properly before we get on the bump. So yeah, it was kind of crazy. Like he called me and he's like, "Hey, I've been seeing what you've been doing with throwing," and I'm like freaking out because it's Coach Murphy. He's like, "I won a national championship in 2012, but I'm always looking to learn something, and I've been around this game a long time. Would you be willing to come down and talk with us?" And I was like freaking out. So of course I'm gonna go down there. Like I bought my plane ticket. They couldn't pay for anything, which was fine. I just wanted an opportunity to speak about overhand throwing. So I flew down there, talked with them and Coach Murphy, and he was just like, "Wow, this is awesome. I've never heard you kind of anyone talk about this, or like the patterns and the movements." And so from there, he talked to Coach Wade Wilson at Texas Lutheran, and Coach Wade, I think, talked to Coach Tarr at Washington. And then, just kind of like, it was like wildfire. Like all these college programs were in need of overhand throwing development. For me, I was like, I'm just a guy just working behind a desk, working with athletes, like in the trenches, trying to figure out how to get better. And I'm like, these D1 SEC programs, like they don't need me. All these girls know how to throw. And then you get in there and you realize like there's still work to be done, and for younger kids, like the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, like we just got to develop, we got to create good movement patterns, and we got to learn and understand where our body is in space.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how like high level throwing evolved. It wasn't like, oh, I want to work with throwers. It was like, I want to be a strength coach and just get these athletes moving the right way. And then you see them throw and you see them rotate and hit, and it's like, wait a second, we got to like pump the brakes and go back to the basics to pattern better, and then we can start to provide force and rate of force production. So
yeah,
that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I love that. I'm so many things jumped off the page right there at me for sure. I see it as a total pandemic, if you may, of throwing. Like I get phone calls. I have a very cool system over here that we're running, like an appointment-based system where most people train with us back-to-back hours, like pitching, hitting. We're an all-inclusive facility that's basically going to work around your schedule as well as your training, practice, game schedule. And I get calls all the time from dads. They're like, "Do you work on throwing for softball?" And yes, we do, for sure. Sign up for a bullpen. It's just going to get you over here, but I got some softballs. Totally. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. And I say like movement's movement, like it's not gender specific. Like throwing is not attacking female athletes. Like some of our girls throw way harder than some of our high school boys. And it's really just a movement pattern that we need to teach and approach a different way.
For sure. 100%. It's interesting to me, you just threw a lot of stuff out here, and like man, it's so funny because so there are phrases and ideas and mechanics that I believe came from photos, and that is the basis of what. And how old are you?
I'm 39.
I'm 37, so we're chilling, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm right there, dude. I hit 88 yesterday. I'm on fire.
That's
like
hilarious.
Like I still throw. Like I'm so pumped to put this video out. It's so funny. But anyway, I just, my experience and what I went through, parents didn't play sports. Dad was a surfer artist. Mom was a teacher. And I was just obsessed with throwing. I'm an only child. Came home from school, WGN with the Cubs, right into the Braves right after that. I'm chilling all summer. I got 7 hours of baseball plus baseball tonight. That's all I needed, right?
Right.
And a lot of the information, I remember like just my whole life, like watching stuff on TV and then going to some of these camps and clinics that I was being taught to throw, just basis of throwing, and just running into like just things that, power position, like all of these things that that I constantly fight to this day. And my favorite part, and I haven't seen a video of you throw, but I can tell what you're being taught or what you're teaching. And I know, like, this guy can throw. Like, I know what I'm looking at as well. And it's interesting that the amount of people that don't want to mess with arm path, which is just wild to me.
Right.
Like that you're not seeing the equation of like your arm path directly affecting the flight of the ball or the spin of the ball or, the axis of rotation, And so finding your page, I couldn't even tell you when I found your page has just been pop. Actually, the place you had where guys were throwing through a tunnel, Like, and there was a wall right on the right.
Yeah,
Am I
yeah,
right? Is my memory
that was
right there?
that was in New Hampshire. We had a blue, like a navy blue wall.
Yeah,
Yep, that was my
yeah,
facility in New Hampshire.
right.
Correct. Yeah,
So
we're
that
taking your
long,
strength and all that.
right? And
Yeah, heck yeah. So that was
I'm pretty sure I found, and I was obsessed. I've always been a visual guy,
yeah,
just watching, learning,
same
observing,
here.
and I've always been trying to find body types that matched my own, and then movement systems that matched my
Sure.
own, and I actually call it long armors. It's funny when my kids come in here and a lot of them throw them, I just go, hey, put your arms out, and they're like,
Yeah.
I'm like, me too, dude. Look at this thing. Look at this freaking sail of an
Right,
arm.
right,
You know what I mean?
right.
And they're always like, oh, I'm like, yeah, like you actually shouldn't be like up in your neck, like you should actually be trying to get this freaking rope thing moving. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just always a blast to see other, like I said, we've never met, we've never talked, I've probably commented a couple times, but
Yeah, right.
I know what I see. And so, watching all your stuff, seeing your terminology, talking about the scat, talking about the stuff, if you could give obviously don't give the secret away, but like a focus of what you see, if someone isn't understanding the ideas, even what we're talking about, if we're being vague right now, what are some of the common things that you feel like are just like easy, low hanging fruit for guys?
Sure. So I kind of want to give you the components of high level throwing, because that will make it a little bit easier to understand. So there's 4 things that I really look at when I'm observing an athlete, and it's the arm pathway and the arm shape. Like, how does the arm load back to release, whether it's like 2-hand ground ball, a bare hand, like catcher thrown down. How does that arm, like when you transition the ball, how does that arm move back, whether it's like a little tighter, a little longer, whatever that might be. That is probably the easiest thing to see visually, because like a kid can see, oh, his arm's like way out here, or he's pointing the ball away, or she's pointing the ball away, whatever it might be. So that is the thing that I look at first, and we kind of work on the arm pathway and then work down from there. So first component is the arm pathway and the arm shape, which again is, I'm going to talk a little more on that. The second one is basically hip to trunk relationship, or separation, resistance, like disconnect, whatever you want to call it. So if an athlete is like striding out towards their target, does their upper half like start to counter rotate, and are they creating like that good tension to accelerate out of that position? So you can see like shirts are like kind of wrinkled on one side when they're rotating back. So you can kind of visually see that as well. The third component is glove side, like lead arm patterning, like what is the lead arm supposed to do? And it's based on where the ball's fielded, what the situation is, how fast you have to get rid of it. So like the glove side's purpose, and again, is to accelerate and rotate the body, create like some counterbalance for the arm loading back. So there's tons of variations with the glove side. Like if you're turning a double play, like that glove's going to peel. If you're like an outfielder, it might work out a little bit. So when parents ask, like, what is the glove side supposed to do? It's, well, is it giving your body the ability to rotate, like the upper body, and accelerate efficiently? Or are you like pushing the ball because you're just like bringing the glove into the chest? So there has to be some like spine movement happening, which, it's when you pull the glove into the chest, you're not creating that, that spine movement, which helps to like give it a little bit more form layback.
Yeah, you kind of got to go with the force, right? Yeah, exactly.
And then the fourth one is just lead leg patterning. Like, how does that lead leg plant on the ground? Does it stabilize? Is it firm to allow the upper body to rotate again and the arm to come through effectively? And some guys that are a little bit bigger might have more of a flex knee when they're throwing, or say we have a shortstop to like the backhand side, there might be more of like a aggressive lead leg patterning, so it's just depends. Like a girl throwing on the run, they're not going to have obviously like an aggressive lead leg because they're changing their orientation of their body. So those are the 4 components of high level throwing, and the lowest hanging fruit, I think, is understanding the arm pathway, understanding how like the shoulder blade like sets the shoulder joint, like actually. But we also have to think of these blended movements. Like if we just do scapula, we're just like jamming the shoulder blade like into the spine. So we have to like create some rotation of the torso as the glove goes forward, like whatever your arm pathway is, the shoulder blade has to like work on the rib cage to set the shoulder joint. So when we were taught L drills and pointing the ball away, a couple things with that. it's easy to just teach a large group kid because it's like point the ball away, point your glove forward, and just rotate. And most kids won't actually rotate or sequence effectively. They'll just like the hips go, trunk goes, arm goes, like there's just no velocity. So that L drill, that like wrist pointing away, is weird for like this arm shape. Like some athletes are like really far out. But also the wrist positioning, like when you throw an object, whether it's like baseball, softball, a shoe, a newspaper, like your hand like slightly supinates to protect your elbow joint before the hand gets behind the ball. So when athletes are like taught to point the ball away, they're not like actually unraveling their arm properly. They're just like picking it up and like trying to like flex their wrist, like which doesn't happen. Right, it doesn't happen in the throw. So the L drills we've taken away, and the wrist flicks, which we've taken away. I think it's more in softball. I mean, I've seen it in baseball too, but for me, I used to do it. I was taught, and I was like, why am I doing this? My athletes are like pushing the ball constantly because I'm doing this 10 times a day, times every time I practice. And like, what is going on here? So when they go to throw, like their elbow works in front of their torso versus the torso carrying the arm into external rotation. So there's that wrist flick pattern that can get kids into trouble early, where they're not using like the chest and the torso to carry that arm and let it sit properly. So, those are the two drills that we've taken away, and we've really just added some like arm behind setups, and some of them like, what the hell is this weird ass drill? Like this arm behind setup. And we started really aggressive, like put your elbow up above your shoulder and rotate and make your throw. And the whole purpose of that was to get girls or boys from like pushing. So we want the elbow, like the tip of the elbow, to get up as you rotate your torso. Yep. We don't want the athletes to like get the elbow up when they load and point the ball away and get like this way. And that's what we were taught. So we've created some really weird movers from that. And some kids are just visual and like, this doesn't work. And they throw really well, and some are natural. But the ones that aren't, they need some help. So yeah.
Love it. Yeah, I was actually just got a photo from yesterday of him throwing. That's literally what we're talking about right there. Like,
totally. Letting the shoulder, like the torso, the shoulders carry that arm into external rotation. And then totally, that's awesome. That's awesome. Like perfect, like movement through.
Yeah.
And one thing, with the wrist flick, so like we started here and just to get exaggerated, and we've kind of obviously evolved and just brought the ball like by the ear, by the shoulder, maybe start at 90, maybe start center chest if you have some like shoulder issues or irritation. So we always modify and create the best movement for them based on like injury history and whatnot. Right. So we're just exploring these movements, and we can change arm slots and explore like spine angles as well for throwing on the run. And I think all that can be taught at a young age, and just low effort, just the right pattern, the right pathways. We want kids that are, for females, like girls that are like in middle school throwing 55, 60, and girls in high school throwing like 65, 70, which is the average for softball velocity. High school is like 54, 55, somewhere in there. Division I's like 63. And then obviously you got some outliers that are like high 60s, low 70s. There might be like a 70s. I think there's one girl from LSU, like 76 or 78 with a softball, which is like mid 80s with a baseball, which is
that's
insane.
Wow. Like that's insane. That's so achievable for them. Like they're just, so, especially when you see their training and like how they go about it, it's wild. Like, I see that. I honestly see it worse in softball than I do in baseball, especially when you're watching some of these high level college games and stuff, and you're like, how is this happening?
I agree, and I have some thoughts on that too. And I think in baseball, everyone throws overhand to start, like every single person, because pitching is overhand. In softball, fast pitch is underhand. So you want all of your young athletes to like learn the movement. But what's happening is these young athletes should be learning how to throw first,
right?
Because that's going to create good like trunk movement, and then they can start getting into their pitch. But most of the girls that like start, they're like chest is forward. So it's really hard with the arm pathway, because most like in softball pitching, like you're going like up versus back. So some girls like start this way, and then they'll like load, and then they like push forward because the sequence is completely off.
Yeah,
so
sure. They don't. Right.
and then obviously you have the size of the ball, which is a little bit bigger. So some of the younger girls' hands are a little bit smaller. So they're pushing versus actually grabbing and like grasping to throw. So that can play an issue too. But I definitely see more of a softball like throwing issue. I mean, baseball for sure. There's still some kids that need help throwing, but there's definitely a pandemic of that. And I think it's just, we're getting better and we're educating, but we still got a long way to go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. And you guys are definitely fighting the fight with it. I love it.
Appreciate it.
I was just watching a little bit of just watching some of the videos of your girls throwing just recently, and watching some of the stuff. And obviously, there's language, but what I would see was, I do like the 2-ball move with the idea of like this bow and arrow kind of counter rotate that you're going into. We call that the rubber band. If you would put rubber bands around your thumbs, right? Like positioning and like stretching the rubber band into your throw helps you counter rotate without even thinking about it, right? Like just concepts. And we always joke about words, like words get in the way a lot of the times because words can slow you down, and just trying to feel out what feels good as you go. One thing that jumped off me right there that I really loved, and it's counter to a lot of people online, is you went top down, and we go top down too. We don't go bottom up. And like it's a lot of the high level guys that I'm working with are one, they're not used to going top down because no one's messed with their arm path. You know what I mean? And they haven't even explored anything, and two, everybody's scared to do it, and so it's fun to watch like intentional mapping of the process of what you're doing, and even with the power position, what I was called the power position, which now what we call the wrong figure 8, right, where the hands are just kind of going away from each other in the wrong direction. And so we were trying to get a little bit of a different figure 8 into it right there, especially in the throwing. And so just watching all of those things go through, it's very fun to watch what we call blurry arms. And so I'm constantly sending some of your videos to some of our softball girls that throw. I'm like, look, like here's the beginning, right? There's a blurry arm as it comes through. There's the end. It's pretty much the same as the throw in baseball. There's no, the size is like there's literally, your Lindor throw is the exact same throw you need to be making over here at short.
Totally.
So,
I mean, there's really no difference. I think second base and softball can get in trouble just because if they were taught the push throw, their elbow might be in front. So like if they go backhand side up the middle, that might be a tough play. So, but yeah, there's no difference. There's no difference. It's the same movements. It's, just different size for sure.
100%. That's great. So there's something I've been on recently a little, just talking about the grip of the ball, right? And you doing baseball and softball, everybody's got their own idea on like where we're balancing thumb, hook, Scherzer's no hook, right there. What experience do you have with grips? Because I've never even gone to the grip idea with softball. We teach the girls just 3-finger and then just trying to have the thumb balance from what we're doing. And obviously with baseball, there's a different thing you could do there, but like I've always been a ring finger on guy.
Me too. I was a ring finger on
right
too,
kind of a claw kind of thing, using this seam that helped me balance it. And then like I'm hugely rotational, especially as I'm coming through my 90s as I go, and I'm able to like tether ball my my hand as I go around with my spine and really accelerate through the zone. And it gives me a very unique profile of I get wild extension. I'm like 7'3" with like a 7'2" approach angle. And then I have a slight like 8-degree gyro because I'm around it. And so like I just don't throw it straight. And so this axis for me allows me to play with a lot of just different shapes and ideas that I really get to have a lot of fun with by like manipulating my wrist into stuff, right? And so with you there, I've heard points of contact, and like this is something that I just don't hear a lot of people talk about. And I feel like I'm amongst another Jedi, and I'd like to hear his opinion on like how we're, because spin efficiency is like, I'm honestly going to get pissed off like the amount of people that love. I'm spinning it at 98%, like if I got 2 more percent, I'm like, hey, we call it the 7, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm like, why don't you just throw it in the 7? If you go right there, like no, it's not going to matter what your spin efficiency is, So anyway.
Yeah, no, it's most of the athletes that we work with are the three finger, like they have the three fingers on. But it's interesting because some of their athletes' hands are smaller. The thumb doesn't go like underneath; it's really on the side, which is a problem because some of these throws, like they can't actually stabilize it when they release. So the thumb's on the side of the ball, so they get like these weird, again, like sprays up and to the right.
Sinkers, yeah,
exactly. And then you combine that with inefficient like wrist positioning, and it's just a really awkward push, like static, no energy throw.
Slack. We call it slack in the arm, right? Like there's just like a movement piece where like you may even like be moving the ball, moving your arm, but the ball's like not moving in space.
Totally.
Like, and your body's just doing everything you're trying to do, but it's just staying in the same spot.
Sure. And that's kind of what I've seen. So we do throw baseballs to the younger girls or like smaller softballs just so they can understand like how to hold it. You know, some of them don't know how to hold like on the seams, like there's a horseshoe on there and they're like, oh, like you put the pads of your fingertips like above the seam so you have something to like pull down on. So some of them are just like underneath the seams, like interesting, and then the thumb's on the side. So it's like this shot put, literally a shot put.
It's like a catapult hook, right?
Right. So exactly. So, you know, using smaller objects to help that process, you know, seeing like take a video and just see like where their hand is. Are they like, I had one girl that was like moving her fingers and like the ball was shifting in her hands while she was, so like ball would fall out a little bit. Like it would slip out. Like, what are you doing with your hand? You're like, keep the ball stable and just let the shoulder blade move. Like don't load the arm through the ball, load it through the shoulder blade. So that's kind of what I've been working with some of our athletes on grip. It's just I let them, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done in both baseball and softball movers that I've worked with. So it's like let's get the patterns correctly. Like, can you rotate? Like, I don't care about your grip if you can't rotate yet. Like if you can't pattern, that's not going to matter. So, you know, that's what I'm working with our softball players with that type of grip. So three finger, thumb underneath, and then adjusting the size of the ball based on their hand size and like what their pattern actually looks like.
Nice. Now, so then in baseball, you're going like, is it more finger pressure?
More finger pressure. Yeah, it's more finger pressure. And for me, like just for position players, like when my middle finger is like a little like kind of way longer than my pointer finger. So like it's weird. So like when the ball is thrown, like I do get a little bit of like sink a little bit. And I do get a little bit of cut. So you know, for baseball players, like position, just like messing around with pressure, like based on what they throw, like an infielder going to like on the run throw, like do you have more pressure in the middle finger, the pointer finger, from an outfielder, like even pressure, and just kind of letting them feel that and explore that. So yeah, it's kind of what do they do? What do they present? Do we get, you know, we get video of it? What do we see? And then we approach it and attack it that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I agree. There was a company recently that I was in talks about, and we were trying to do some beta testing and some stuff, and they had a force plate censored baseball, and they were trying to have me use it, but the problem was it was stuck to wires and you couldn't throw it. And I was trying to explain to them that like, well, the pressure and the G-force in the ball as I'm going to throw it is not the same as it's just resting on a desk, as it's flying through the air in my hand. Like there's you know, I was trying to explain something to a parent. We were talking about the same thing. Like the dad played, he just can't, the ball's not coming out right. There's a release issue. And so what we finally figured out was like he's basically like jellyfishing his fingers like as it's going, where like he just literally pulls his fingers off the ball and that just completely kills the spin and almost knuckles out of his hand, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And so we found that with an interesting idea. I have a Stalker Pro S2 that gives me spin rate. And so I spin rate my drills. And so with the drills that we do in there, it gives us kind of another level of feedback where it's like, well, you know, you're pulling down, one of our college guys, you pull down 104 and it spins at 2,900. when you get on the mound, there hasn't been enough research
Sure.
for me to see what that is yet, and I haven't really seen anybody put anything out on that.
Gotcha.
But I'm seeing anywhere from 2 to like 300 different in spin rate from where it is, and then he can get on the mound and he's like 96 with like 2600,
Sure.
right? And so like I'm a weird guy. I kind of figured out. So I'm a low spin four seam guy, but I still have carry because of my extension. And so I actually think that the way we measure velocity is incorrect. I think we should measure it in flight time the way we do with missiles, milliseconds, feet per second, because I'm so much closer.
Sure.
Because it's not a real representation. You know, we have people smacking 100. And when I played in Mexico for 6 years, like I saw people throw 100 that like looked like it was 115.
Sure.
And I saw people throw 100 that got smacked. And so like you don't know what that is until you get there and then you watch it and then you listen to hitters going like, that's the slowest 100 I've ever seen. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I peaked at 95. You know, and then they're telling me I'm so much harder to hit than him, and I'm like, I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense. Besides, you know, I'm a 7-pitch guy. I get that. But if we're comparing fastballs, like I don't know what you mean. So you know, there's just so much information that hasn't been put out there on that. So you know, with softball, it's definitely something I would be interested in. You know, even how you're talking about how it comes through. You know, I reverse engineer from the fingers because I just feel like that's the easiest way to start. You know, trying to teach spin axis and then you know climb the the arm path through the spin axis and see how well we can repeat those angles as it goes. So you know, interesting just to hear your take on it. You know,
no, I mean we do this drill. It's called a wall tap drill. I don't know if you've seen it before, but we use like one of our lightning balls, just a heavy object, and then we'll go down to a softball, or we have a baseball player we're working with, and they get up against the wall, you know, maybe like their front toe is against the wall. They could be standing, they could be kneeling, but we're trying to map how the wrist is supposed to move and how the hand is working behind it. And then like if you're 3 fingers, 2 fingers, whatever you have. So this drill kind of allows them to like manipulate their wrist, but then they tap the wall. So like move over. So like they'll come through, they'll like go slow. We'll video from behind and the side to see like what they're actually doing. And some girls are like, and then they'll push versus like smooth and like tap the wall. Athletes that push during this wall tap drill, so like those like wrist flick athletes, you're gonna get the elbow, the forearm like hitting the wall. Versus the chest and that unravel, but it's multi-purpose. It's good for like sequencing the torso, like left side, shoulder blade movement.
That you say that I haven't.
But then just like, and then just like getting video from behind.
An idea of the visual of like keeping the elbow behind the shoulder and having those 3 pieces. We call them 3 pieces, right? Like really, you know, you got your flat field goal that you go rotate into, right, as you go into it right there. And we see it all the time too, where the elbow breaks the chain, you know, inside of it as the shoulder, you know, the chest stops and then it turns into a push instead of keeping that elbow behind into the rotational face.
And you just know, like, you're not like obviously gonna like fully rotate. You know, you're just gonna kind of like pause as you create that movement. But it really helps, you know, those types of patterns. Plus, like figuring out what their wrist is doing, and because it's hard to see in a full speed, you know, throw. So are they doing that and then like turning? Are they like coming up? Are they just rolling it the night like really nicely through the zone? So we kind of mess with that and then get a video from behind to see like, do they mess with release points every time? Like, are they consistent? Just it's just interesting information to get to see like where your infielders release the ball, or where your outfielders release the ball, or where they think they release the ball. Like catchers, like some are like, get to where you release the ball, and they're just like behind their head, or like they're like back here. So it's really interesting to see like where they should be like unraveling their arm, like their forearm, and rotating their torso versus what they think they're doing. So
I like that. And I can visualize it too. You know, just I'm trying to think about. You know, do you have an example of a high level thrower that kind of really stays in that deep elbow behind the shoulder move that you like on the mound? The first guy I thought of was like Chapman, but like he's my example for everything.
Chapman,
right?
is, I mean, I was thinking of, because I got a lot of video, and I think it was a 2008 All-Star game in Yankee Stadium. So I had like Chapman, I had I had like all these. I think I had, who else is in that? I don't know. I got a lot of video, and I would say yeah, I mean, Airless Chapman is probably the best for getting a deep loading pattern because, I mean, I'm trying to think of a righty that does a really nice job of that. I don't know, Airless would be a really good example for that. But he hides his elbow. He like the arm, like he has so much range of motion, like a ton of stretch, and it's packed, stabilized, and it's a really cool movement. So that would be a good example to see the elbow staying behind the body as a
It's funny because I feel like a lot of people will anticipate, especially all the biomechanics that have all their letters next to their name on Instagram that know all the answers. People would call that draggy, right? Like, oh, the arms behind the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I just know exactly what connection you're talking about,
Sure.
and I just, for me, we kind of teach it a little different way. I like to do I have a very Latin-based influence thing because when I'm down, I played with 5 guys that threw 100, and we went full Jedi. And just like I played with one dude. What sucks about playing in Mexico where I was, and I was down there from 13 to 18 or 17, something 13 to 18. Yeah, 13 to 18. They don't use their real names. They don't use everything's a nickname. Even their last name may not be their last name. So like I can't even find the guys that I played with. And then of course the rosters and if you Google me, it's so funny. It's my favorite joke. Like when parents go try to figure out who I am, what's going on. I have 1 season in Mexico. It's missing 5 seasons, and even that season is wrong. And so it's like I don't even know. Do you know who to call at Baseball Reference in Mexico to get your shit fixed? Because if you can't get it at LSU to get your Tuesday night, thing, like I don't even know what to tell you there. I got nothing.
That's funny.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Just like I said, as it goes. But just thinking about how it comes through. What's his name? It was just the Astros closer. I'll look it up. It's gonna hurt my brain, but he's one of the ones that really I'm just really thinking about that elbow climb as it comes through, and it just really looks like his his rib cage is handling all of that force into that flexibility, and it's really nice to see.
Who else I was watching O'Neal Cruz, shortstop for Pirates. Like, geez, if you watch his, and people be like, if you watch his throw, it's like, well, he's not using his glove side, but it's like it kind of clears around his rib cage, and it's just there's no pointing away. There's nothing. It's 101 across the diamond or 90. Whatever
they do that. So that's where one of the things I got it from. You might want to. Have you ever done a rope pull?
Yep.
Just from here, just pulling it through. Yeah, there's a guide, we call it picking up a suitcase into transitioning into it right in there, and if you keep the pressure on the rope. That is one of our favorite ones to teach arm path because you just see right away the first thing they do, they're they throw their face forward and they're like, oh man, I'm like, totally. That hurts, man.
Yeah,
don't do that.
We call it a shoulder blade upward rotation. So they'll put the band on and they'll have to rotate, and if they go forward, it's the same kind of idea. So I like the word transitioning into external and through external rotation. Just create movement. And high level throwing again was about movements through positions, and not you got to get to here, you got to pause with the ball facing away. It's how do you move through those checkpoints?
Right. And that's back to what we were talking about before. That's where those photos. I mean? That's what I was taught. I distinctly remember watching the photo guide with my dad and looking at it, and then I went through the Tom House system. I did all this stuff, and it wasn't until I played with these guys that threw 100 that I started watching them long toss. Oh, that's where I was going with that. So one of the psychopaths that I played with would, and I'm not sure if you've worked with Dominicans before, but they're they're out to 200 feet in 90 seconds. You know what I mean?
Yep.
There's no throttle, right? It's just at your face, at your face, at your face. And then we're out here, and everybody else is just, totally. Oh man, how do you do that? Right. And so, just watching as, the process goes, this guy it's crazy. He would shag. So early work, throw, shag. At the end of shagging, whether we were home or away, didn't matter. He would grab one baseball, go to home plate, and shuffle fire and try to throw it out of center field. And if he didn't throw it out of center field, he was down. And if he threw it out of center field, he was up. And I was the first day I watched it, I remember just watching, And then like from then on, the whole team, it was like everybody's thing every day. We would just sit at the rail and be like, here we go. And sick, he's pitching today.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, let's go. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
No,
it was.
I played with a couple guys that would actually long toss with a softball.
Yeah.
And then they would go to a baseball afterwards and just like 96, 98, like no big deal. And they just felt that the softball just like spacing their hands out a little bit more. Like they just felt, obviously it's 2 ounces heavier. So that weight, but also like their hands being a little bit further apart, they just felt like really comfortable. And then coming down to a baseball, like it was a little pea that they were throwing, like a dart. It was
honestly, and
crazy.
I did it too with them, right? I think that's why they're so good at spin efficiency. You know, to me, there's like this thing you can do with your hand. Obviously, you have the jellyfish, right? But it was explained to me called the hook.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if you've ever heard that before, but like you can hook a baseball and a softball by like pulling it this way, and you can feel the pressure on your fingers. Like I can just keep that, as long as I want to try to push right there. And that softball, you have to keep the hook, otherwise that thing slips out of your hand,
falling out. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so like watching them go through that, I totally agree. It's there's a whole post load activation. Like I went the other way with it. Like, and now that's what I like. Like plyo balls to me are a way to trick the arm into post load activation, especially with like just general small progression of throwing, right? Like taking away the aiming factor of what is just standing 3 feet in front of a wall, and then them just understanding, like, look, you're just going to throw in this wall to warm up. Doesn't matter what it, like, where it goes. Just like, I don't care if you throw it over the damn wall. Like, please don't. But try. Like, try to hit the thing in front of you. You shouldn't be able to miss it. But, like, really just keeping the energy going through that ball and, like, trying to feel the energy and the weight of it. It's just funny to watch them go into a baseball right after that. They're like, what is this? I'm like, that's what you're supposed to feel like all the time.
Right.
This is 5 ounces. If it ever feels like it's 10 pounds, that's a problem. You know?
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree, man. I agree. So it's really interesting, and I think there's a lot more research, like you said, that needs to be done between like the correlation, from testing it just without actually releasing it.
And I'm not sure if you've been to the ABCA, but there's just so many opinions and biomechanics things and like all this stuff and force plates and like I mean there's a certain level of it that I feel like there's just too much to translate, and none of these things, to I think both of our points, have anything to do with the freaking arm. Like it's always the legs, the hips, like all these things. And I'm like, someone says hips to me one more time, like I'm in a high level argument with some people,
right.
Like
That's funny.
Some people that I cannot speak about online.
Like,
but I'm like, hips don't throw the ball. I will die on that sword. I will. It's my favorite thing to do to a dad, that he's giving a kid shit about his mechanics or his front foot. I'm like, okay. I go throw the baseball, and they go, what do you mean? I go, what throws the baseball? And they're like, your hips. And I just put it on their hip, and I'm like, throw it. Let's see how this goes, dude. Like it doesn't work that way. You cannot think about your back hip when your hand is trying to throw the ball. It does not. Doesn't
in
work.
The live situation, it's just like you're just trying to compete and move the right way. You focus on the other things in training and development, but it's
I've seen it all the time where dude gets into his head and he's like, I gotta get in my back hip. I'm like, dude, you just hit the kid in the ear hole.
Right.
Like you're not putting it together.
Yeah, sequencing not right. It's a little something off there, but no, I feel you on that.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your shop and your system, right? You've been doing this a long time. What are the correlations are you seeing for long-term training? I think that's a conversation that nobody really has. I like to call it the lifetime of throwing. Like just you playing ball, you saw this too, and this is hard to explain unless you've played college baseball, but there was people that were 1,000 times better than me, unreal amount that finished their year and like, okay, I'm done. I'm just never gonna throw a baseball ever again. I'm like, what? Like ever? Like you're just you're hanging him up. Like every one of those, like we're about the same age, so there were like Facebook goodbye letters that people were just putting out in their careers. You know what I'm saying? They're like, game. I'm like, what is happening? Like, why are you
forever?
Like, I'm just gonna. This is the best thing ever.
Right.
Especially when I got out of college and I played pro ball. Like, I tell all the kids, I'm like, you don't even know what it is until you can make your own decisions in the game.
Sure.
And your coach really can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel you. I mean, I played indie ball for a couple of years, just delaying life, a little bit before getting into working in New York City. But my favorite times were playing catch, infield, outfield. Like, I just loved it. I'm improving my skills. I just love throwing, and I was always drawn to it like you were. I wasn't like I want to be a throwing coach. I was drawn to it. I love the movement. It was just a universal thing. Like, when someone's throwing something when they're doing a movement, and it was just a cool movement for me. So, yeah, I mean, you got to be consistent with the training. Highlevelthrowing.com is where everything is housed. So all of our throwing programs, our strength programs, all the products and things like that. And we have lots of free downloads, free articles, and obviously we have lots of books and content as well for everybody coming to learn and figure out how to throw more efficiently. But I mean, you have to be consistent with it. If you're hitting 7 days a week and throwing once a week, like, you're probably not going to improve your throw. And we have athletes that train on our online platform and just buy the program and they go through it. And we have a lot of girls now that have been with us, and some baseball players too that have been with us from like 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. Now they're freshmen in college or sophomores in college, and they're starting D1 programs. Like, one of our athletes, she's starting shortstop at Villanova. St. Jean, Lily St. Jean, Wisey, and Lily, her younger sisters that just committed to NC State. So they've been on a remote platform for like almost 3 years, literally just throwing, training, like getting the videos, getting breakdowns, and just being consistent with it, and that's what we're excited about. Like, we can see their progress over time. We can see, how they don't move well and to moving really well, and then getting an opportunity to play and transfer those skills into an actual like real game and real university with like real dollar or scholarship dollars and things like that. So it's, really, really exciting to see that from scratch. And, all the technology that we have is so powerful, but like you said, like, there's the technology for certain athletes. Like, again, if you don't rotate well, like, there's no equipment. I mean, we can see that, you can put you on, 40 motion, or you can go to Rapsodo, and, you can do whatever you want and find those numbers. But like, if you don't actually move the right way, it's not going to matter. So,
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it. So so if somebody's going to be, what's a lifetime of throwing in years to you? Like, what would you career, I've seen some wild stuff. I've seen like 45-year-olds throw 95, you know what I mean? Like, and you know what I mean? So like, lifetime is just such a weird, like I said, that's just, nobody talks about, like,
it's a weird thing.
Like, you got to understand your basis, and like, you're going to have, you get into, I don't know what's going on. Like, that can happen sometimes. I got guys that'll call me up and there's something's wrong, there's slack, ball's not going where it's supposed to, or whatever, and it's hard to do that over the phone, right? And then just watching that, roller coaster of like, man, I really wish, something felt better, when it was going through. But is that, I know I asked you a couple different things there, but
it's a tough thing. Like, what's a lifetime of throwing, really? Like, what's the volume of an athlete? What should it be? From a position player throwing versus a pitcher throwing is completely different. And I think the biggest thing is volume. Like, what is their volume every week? What is their volume each month? What is their volume in the summer? What is their volume throughout the year? Like, I think that's the biggest approach to understanding where they're at, but also what type of training history have they done? Have they done any training? Like, what's their experience levels? I always, when I work with, pro athletes, I'm asking them, like, what worked for you? Like, what works for you? What don't you like in the weight room? What made you really successful? Like, what are those things that made you who you are? And what are the things that, you maybe have bad experiences with, whether it's lifting or throwing coaches or drills or whatever. So I always like to see like what those things are, and then trying to figure out like, okay, now we have a plan, we have an approach. But from like a lifetime of throwing, it's a hard question. Like, I'm going to throw until I can't throw anymore. Right. If you're, what's his name? I mean, Bartolo Colon, he was out there forever, man. He's still throwing coconuts.
Bro, he's still facing, I saw a video the other day.
He faced some high school kids, right? Or some young kids.
He's facing 12-year-olds he's facing 12-year-olds in a random field, and he's swinging. Like,
you don't care. He's coming at him.
nuts up to you, 12-year-old, to G-hack on old Big Sexy, you know?
Yeah, and I think too, it goes back to like the training and the consistent training. Like, what modalities are you using? Are you strength training, using overload, underload implements? What type of recovery do you have? You know, those are huge questions that, you know, take a lot of time to talk through, and different for everybody. You know, so I think it's a hard question, but I think to look at the pieces of the volume, their injury history, their experience, and then like those things, like what made them successful, and what things, you know, maybe they've had bad experiences with.
So that just got me a good. I think there's a path we can go down here with this, right? So love the volume. What have you seen any extreme volume? And like, what would you define as extreme volume?
So, I mean, so we'll go for like softball position players. Like, I've seen 5 to 6 days of over 100 throws in some, which is a lot of volume. Like, I like to throw every day, but like manipulating the intensity, the drill work, like plyo balls versus normal softballs, long toss versus like short work. So that's a lot of volume. Like, I think anywhere from like 40 to 60 throws, you know, and that would be kind of like a medium high volume. Like, you're getting to 75 throws in a day for a softball player. That's, you know, kind of getting to that max. So I've seen that extremes for pitchers, like softball pitchers, is even worse. Like, I've seen 800 pitches in one weekend, which is insane. Like, we shut this girl down, and she would just like continue to play, and like, you got to train. Like, you can't just throw 800 pitches in a weekend. Literally, she pitched Friday night. She pitched 2 games or 3 games on Saturday, like back to back, and like a morning game on Sunday, and like they were in the championship on Sunday night. So she pitched like, I think it was 5 games or something like that, which is, you know, she's throwing 80 or 100 games or 100 pitches a game. You know, it's 500-600. I think it was 800 though. The total amount that she threw.
Do you work with fast pitch pitching?
Yeah. Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay, so then I gotta know, like, because to me, I feel like it's just full of shit when they say fast pitch is like, it's more natural. I'm like, the arm's still kind of like getting some kind of like extension and feel. Like, obviously there's a little bit more of an off type thing, but like to what you're saying, like the tissue can't handle that much.
It's, you know, it's still a dramatic like position, and there's still the same similar forces that are on the elbow and the shoulder through that release. So like, why wouldn't you want to create good like trunk blended movements and like glove side and arm pathway that makes sense? So, you know, and then it's just, there's a lot of quirks in the pitching motion, just because you're going linear. Like, it's a hard thing. You're going linear, then you have to like transition in the air, then plant. So it's similar to like an outfield curl hop, where you're like going up, you got to plant. And some kids like go really vertical and they can't control the landing, and some kids are just really good moving forward. So it's just a weird movement, like if you're not like watching it every time, but it is still pretty fascinating. But a lot of the forces are very similar to actually overhand throwing, and Dr. Gretchen Oliver from Auburn has a lot of good research papers on that, and some really good information on softball pitching.
That's great.
It's just interesting.
Yeah, that's always been a thing where I've always just been like, I don't know. All right, so I have an interesting, because you said some stuff right in there. So Wednesday, so I'm 2 days out. I threw 115 pitches as hard as I could. I peaked at 88, and then by the time I got to like 105, I was down to like 81, 82. And then I had an 8-hour break, and then I run a class called Advanced BP, which is me throwing a short box. And what we do is, when we do this Advanced BP idea, it's like there's no teaching, it's just situations. So what we do is they go eight balls on our machine, on our Hack Attack Junior with our auto feeder. We have like 10 kids. We break them up into teams, and we literally just play games the whole time. So fastballs in the middle, you know, they go 3 up, 3, 3 outs. They go back and forth. They play 7-inning game. And then after that, I throw. And so like post 115, I threw another 352 pitches, but I didn't go over 61 miles an hour because I was like a 46. So like, and I'm 6'3" with like I haven't measured my wingspan, and I'm sure it's gotten longer since I continue to throw, but I think I have like a 6'11" or 6'10" wingspan. So I'm just a Neanderthal with long arms, you know? But that being said, like I was it was one of those things where I was like, one, I need to do this just to see if I can do it. Number right. And so I just ended up doing some ISO holds. Of all of the rehab stuff that I had done. So I'm not sure if you know, but I broke my elbow my senior in college.
I did know that.
This whole giant shit started. And so like I've had so many people tell me that you'll never throw again, and I just can keep throwing and just keep pumping videos out of me, just like, oh yeah, sick. Here we go. Here's, sorry, Dr. Andrews, but you're wrong. Like,
right.
Like I'm still out here just ripping heaters with this.
Sure. Well, that was like,
yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead. I was saying,
and I don't mean to rip on him, but like my aunt is a VP in a medical, or she's retired now, but she explained it to me like as it happened. And like for everybody at home, your doctor is going to tell you you'll never do it again due to the malpractice insurance process, where if they happen to give you a slimmer of hope due to our legal system, they're not going to say,
it's crazy.
You know what I mean? So they kind of want you to prove them wrong, and send that picture with the sign, the sign, the signature on it while you're in the big leagues. They can be like, oh, you proved me wrong. Right. From right in there. So, yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, no, I remember the R.A. Dickey had no UCL, right? Yeah, without a UCL, and that movie, and it's like, okay, so no one can figure it out. Like, he could still throw,
he was like 86, right?
He was like 86. I think it was 95.
Oh, really?
Without a UCL, yeah. Oh, wow, I think it was a documentary, Knuckleball, I think it was.
Oh, right. Yeah, I never even went through that. I'll check
check that out. And I was like, wow, he was born, like, either disintegrated, like, they didn't know why, like, either have one or just disintegrated. Like, I don't know, the guy doesn't have a UCL and he's throwing. But then over time, like, obviously, he had to manipulate and change and throw knuckleball. But it's an interesting documentary. So, I mean, there are some outliers for sure that you're like, how the hell, like, you break your elbow and you still can continue to throw and throw and throw. And I mean, what would you attribute just you being able to throw all the time and before that?
I would attribute it to this like free space idea that I've kind of found that I see a lot in your girls' movements, where like I don't have any resistance at all on my body through throwing, right? And when I rotate, and so like there is some force vectors that I stay on way longer than most people, and I feel like that is kind of like what helps me. Like I really stay on the gas past my left pocket, and it's something we teach with a lot of people. And I just see, I'm anti-pronation, actually. I'll go ahead and stand on that one. That's definitely what I was throwing 94-mile-an-hour screwballs with two fingers, pretty much, trying to get two-seam action, because that's what I was told to do. Pronate through release, that worked out real well. By the way, kids, please don't do that.
We have some like kids that have tried to like actively do it, and it's just like they don't actually, like, the shoulder blade like pops up and doesn't like protract. The trunk doesn't decelerate properly.
I try to explain it like this, like, when you whip your arm the way you do it, you can send an energy shockwave in the wrong direction. And so you can see it goes up in the neck. I see it a lot in Scherzer. Scherzer had that one World Series, he had to have, acupuncture in his neck. And I'm like, buddy, like, quit snapping your arm down and stop. Like, his follow through to me is just like, every time I'm like, dude, like, what is going on?
Pretty aggressive.
And you can see it in a game, like what I see with him as he goes, like, it's not that I feel like he's going to get hurt, because he obviously bulletproofed his elbow and shoulder after all that, right? But I see where the nerves take the energy too much, and then his feel for his pitches goes, and that's like, that just can't happen, right? Like, you start creating a little neck thing with, like, you're up into the trap and it's blocking the signal to your hand, like, you're gonna leave that shit over the middle and she's gonna go.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be careful of that stuff, and then some of that gets misdiagnosed too. It's like there might be some TOS there, or whatever it might be. So we've had some kids that like start to lose, like, that came to us and like start to lose their like some feeling, and like we don't know what that is. We got to shut you down. Like, you're coming to us from another program and you're feeling this stuff. We got to like pump the brakes first, because that could be a signal to something else. So anytime you hear that, people at home, if you're hearing like loss of like control or like tingling, or like they can't like feel, like, I think a lot of the terminology, like they can't feel like the ball off the fingers. So just be careful of that, and just know that it's not like, oh, you just might be like tired or fatigued, but if it's over a long time, like,
do you have any assumptions about what could be causing that? Because I have a couple. Also,
you go first.
Not talked about, by the way.
Nobody talks
about when you get tired. When you get tired, you can't feel the ball in your hand.
For me, I started to use dynamometers just to like get grip strength after an outing. So like the kid would throw on Friday. They come in Saturday morning and like train or whatever. We do a grip strength to see like what, and we have numbers from pre-game. And if there was like a big enough difference, we're like, oh, you shouldn't throw today. Like they had a light kind of toss or whatever.
Bauer's doing that. I'm pretty sure I don't know if you've been following Bauer's stuff and Bauer's team. He's right on that. They Tim, his strength guys is just really right up both of our alley. And he did in one of his vlogs, he did, I'll have to see if I can find it and send it to you. But he just said something interesting about they were measuring the space between the shoulder and the humerus, and then the humerus and the forearm. And like they were just doing a bunch of co-contraction stuff and they were measuring it in millimeters with some kind of like laser thing to it. But he was just showing that he could return it to normal distance with, and like I'm assuming it's just some like, you know, full connection combo move or something that would get it to connect to it. But I like I said, I try to find shit all the time on some of this stuff, and everything just seems so vague and no one really wants to talk to that stuff. So that was what was fun about you.
No, I think too, like the grip strength, I think there is something to it there. Just, you know, for losing pounds of force, like if you're 10 or 20 pounds less than what you were before, like there's something going on, some blockage happening that we need to release and get you connected again, like you said. So yeah, that's
so I see two, maybe three spots on that exact same thing. So help me out if you're right here. So, you know, with the nerve path going, I really just, after everything that happened, so break my elbow, MRI, go rehab, throw, something else is wrong. New spot, burning, like no feeling in the finger, something's wrong. Go back, look at the MRI. We should have done an ulnar nerve transposition while we were in there. Gee, thanks. Appreciate you. Let's do another one. So then we do ulnar nerve transposition.
How was your
and
groove?
Then I start feeling free. Yeah.
So a deep groove or shallow? Yeah, the shallow groove.
Yeah, just right up here.
Yeah,
just shallow groove right in there. And that seemed to have taken whatever tension that was going on with it right there.
Right.
So that to me, I feel like is probably the cheat code that I have, because my ulnar nerve is not in that arm like impact zone as much. So I have more, you know, slack in the movement. But what I noticed is, if you get a knot in the top of your trap where that goes there, and then behind the shoulder blade, really like into that, and the tissue that's connected to the spine, I see a massive disconnection in like consistency. And so like for me, traveling the signal down, right? Because it is an electrical signal. And if the electrical signal doesn't have a clean pathway, then we're not going to get the fire to the same, especially down to the fingertips. And so we do a ton of stuff with Acumobility and soft tissue stuff before and after we throw. And then that's where I see the biggest cleanups in what happens to that. And then one of my favorite ones, especially when the kids start, and shout out to Kelly Starr for this amazing, it's trap release. And it's like the worst. It's the worst best, you know, rib move into it. And what's funny is I actually see more relief on glove side than on throwing side, which would make sense. Have you seen the
first rib?
Yeah, especially when we go into that right there. Have you seen the example on the fascia guy? I can't think of his name, but he did the shirt thing. It kind of blew me away. So he does this, like if my shirt is 0 and neutral, right, and like, so this is my throwing arm, right? If I squeeze my shirt and I go like this right here, and this is where my adhesion is, it pulls on this side. And so like there's a little bit of tension in the neck on this, but like that's my primary dominant side. So I'm going to think about this, but not realizing that it's coming from the left side. So we double up AccuBalls right behind the shoulder blades as we go into like Snow Angels and some other stuff into it.
It's like some upper movement.
Right, exactly. And so it just kind of opens up the scap so they have space to start moving around. And we just see like pitching in our, you know, system when people come into it, like everybody has to do that. You have to do this. No question. It sucks. Everybody knows. Like
we've seen a lot of like.
Yeah, exactly.
We've seen a lot of like really good response with like some pec release as well for some of our athletes that are just like so rounded and they can't like actually use their shoulder blades. So you like putting a football and like the rack and like moving that, or Acumobility, like those things.
The
anything
on the pec monitor is just huge.
We've seen some good stuff, and then like subscap and terrace, like we've seen some good results with that, just moving either up against the wall or on the ground, and especially for. Honestly, I feel like softball they just go, go, go. Like baseball does too, but there's like 7 tournaments or 7 games in a weekend. And it's just like the volume is crazy. So I feel like those athletes can really benefit from the soft tissue work just because they're literally playing 6, 7 games in a weekend and they practice all week, and they're not playing like a doubleheader Saturday, Sunday. It's like Friday night, 3 on Saturday, and if they win on Sunday, they keep playing. So
yeah,
that's
like actually where we see our biggest recommendation. I want to throw that out to your base. If you're familiar with Acumobility or you have a lacrosse ball, you can also get this on our website. If you do those snow angels in between games, and pitchers, I'll do it mid-inning. If I'm in the 5th and I know I'm getting a little fatigued and I can kind of do a little shoulder roll and I feel like it's swollen or I got some resistance, I'll just slap that Acuball in there, lean on it in the dugout, do some little side raises and some front raises just to open up the tissue, and all of a sudden I'm back ready to go.
Yeah.
You know, so like, please, soft tissue is game changer, especially for, trying to last. And like I tell the parents all the time, you hit the nail on the head right there. Like, you play 8 games in 48 hours and see how that goes.
See how you feel.
Tell me how Monday goes.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, like movement, mobility, soft tissue before and after, pre, post. I mean, you want to give yourself the best opportunity to feel good that day and then recover for the next session. So, if you're neglecting your tissue, all these adhesions, and these restrictions, and they start to get like bunched up, and then you can't signal the right way. So yeah, that's an important piece.
Totally. Well, my friend, I don't want to eat up too much more of your time. I feel like we've really covered a lot. This has been fun. Awesome. Obviously, we could do this all day. Yeah. I just messaged one of my guys that is actually near you. Our hitting guy, Brad Berto, is in a I don't know if you're familiar with the Black Sox, but there's a cool like indie ball tour where one of these guys takes a team and they go play all the indie teams trying to help guys get jobs.
Sure.
And so like he's real close to you in Florida, so he just I sent him your website, just whatever. He said he's going to try to reach out and try to schedule a time to come by. Maybe we'll shoot. We always try to shoot like a vlog with somebody wherever we go somewhere, like double exposure where we can get into stuff, something like this, and then make a dope little video for you guys too and do some stuff. Because like anytime you can collab, that's what was cool about Wednesday. It was like Jake Savicki, Stephen Canez, the College Burnout. I mean, we've seen him, the Dragon, and then Coach Rack. And so like we did a home run derby, we did live at bats, we shot some skits. Like it was just a fun time, right? And so. We're trying to help, especially with anybody like you guys that put out such good information.
Thank you.
So it's kudos to you guys on fighting that fight, because that's literally my favorite thing about over there. It's
that.
Awesome.
I appreciate that, man. That means a lot. Thank you for having me on. Like, this is really cool, and giving your viewers, just a different approach and different thought process on overhand throwing and some other stuff that we talked about. So
exactly.
Yeah, man, I'd love to do it again, at some point, but I appreciate it.
Definitely, so much. Guys, go follow Austin. He's in Florida. Let's see what Deerfield, right? Deerfield Beach.
Deerfield Beach. Yep. And then our online programs, highlevelsrowing.com, where you can contact me, reach out to me. We have clinics as well for baseball and softball for high school rec leagues.
Something if you ever come to San Diego from right there. One of our followers, or one of the girls that throws with us, Dad just commented in there that he's reaching out trying to get something out here. And
nice. I'm gonna be out there. Actually, I'm gonna be in Tustin, California.
Oh yeah, that's in
Temecula and Temecula.
Yeah, Temecula is about an hour from us.
Okay, I'm gonna be in Temecula. We have I'll be Tustin April 27th to the 30th, and then Temecula May like that 5th, 6th, 7th weekend.
We'll have to figure something out, something like that in there.
Awesome, yeah.
Definitely something right there.
And if not,
we'll reach out.
I'm back in August, so
yeah, for sure. I'm sure you're all over the place like we are. We're all over the place.
I know, right?
We might have to go to Arizona soon. There's all kind of crazy shit that we have to go. Right,
it's all fun, man. It's all fun stuff. Definitely. Helping kids, it's
100%. Yeah, dude, you gotta get that truth out there where it's like, and to the softball girls, whoever taught you to throw, like this is, we just go like really through the genealogy of throwing. I'm like, whoever taught you to throw, did they play and can they still throw?
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Like, sure. I don't care what mechanics you're talking about. Those two things need to be present in, what you're trying to do and learn how to throw. And even by all means, take all the information you want, but at least try it, form your own opinion about it to see if you like it, instead of just like, well, my coach says I have to throw this way. which if you're pigeonholing anybody, like, you just missing the whole thing. Like, it
Right.
I hope you all understand it doesn't matter what you look like, it just can't hurt. And she has to either be out or it has to be a strike, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it's way more of a goal-based system than anything. So, yeah.
Sure.
All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate it. You have a good
All right,
rest
man.
of your day. I'll put this out, send some stuff to you here soon, and we'll get going, though. Nice to meet you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you too. Appreciate it.